Hello, everyone. This is Alex Tremble from the GPS Leadership Solutions. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today is the third installment of the GPS Exceptional Leadership Series. And that's when I go out and find exceptional leaders within all their respective industries and areas and bring them to the table so they can share their value with us. When I say us, I mean us because I'm learning so much too on this journey. Today we have Joe Ward, who is the former SES, Senior Executive Service, executive over the U.S. Department of the Interior's Interior Business Center. Joe has also served as a senior officer in the world's greatest Air Force, as well as senior leaders within multiple private sector organizations, and now currently the CEO of Ward Management Group. I'm not going to share everything Joe's going to talk about, but this conversation is going to be filled, jam-packed with great content for you. Specifically, he's going to really push back on that thought that everyone needs a mentor, and really, is mentor more important than having someone to model? So that's a very interesting conversation we're going to dive into, as well as the question of what does it mean to be politically savvy, and how do you exercise? How do you develop those skills so you can reach the goals that you have for your career? Those are critical, and Joe's going to really dive into those. So, as always, before we get started, please click that like button, click the subscribe button, click the notifications button. It truly is important because really YouTube decides what videos to show, what to promote, how often to promote it based on those three factors. So if you would please click that like, subscribe, and notification button, greatly appreciate it. But now that you've done that, I trust you have, with no further ado, here's Joe. Joe, for joining us today. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Alex. Thank you very much.
I have to say, I really appreciate you being willing to share your expertise with us today. You and I have known each other for, I want to say almost maybe 8-9 years, something long, really long.
About 8 or 9 years. Yeah.
I don't want to date myself, but my gray is showing a little bit. So, Joe, you have not only served in leadership positions within the military, not only within leadership positions within the federal government, but also the private sector. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on how to be successful, and especially for the viewers today, how to be successful within the federal government. So would you actually maybe just start off with sharing what is the difference between spending time in an organization or in a position versus investing time? What's the difference?
I think that's another great question, Alex. I think there's a huge difference because when you invest time, it's more than a job. It's more than a position. Mm-hmm. It's more than being a basketball player.
Yeah.
And in Coach K's illustration, he talked about the fact that he taught these young people how to be responsible men, in addition to successful basketball players. And that's the difference. And when I met you at my time in the federal government, I was invested in my position and invested into what we were doing in terms of creating good government.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And as a result, I worked a lot of long hours, but it wasn't work because I was invested.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
No, I appreciate that, and I, for some reason, translate a lot of leadership concepts to financial concepts. So when you said investing, it also made me think of, you take your money and you put it in the stock market or your 401k, not just to throw it away. You're not just spending it. You're not just buying some new shoes or something like that. You're putting it somewhere where it's going to grow. It's going to make you better later on.
So when you say investing, it makes me think of you're putting your time into something that's going to make you better later on, not just kind of throwing it away, I guess.
Well, I'm glad you touched on that point, because the other side of investing is that you expect some return on investment. Now, you're talking about a return on investment in this particular case for me. The return on investment that I have looked at and sought out in every position that I've ever had, whether I was in the military or in the private sector, or as an independent business owner, or as a senior executive in the federal government, was how can you serve people better?
Yeah.
How can you create better outcomes? How can you, move the needle to the right, even if it's incremental movement? How can you do that? How can you create good government, better government? That's the return on investment that I always sought for, that I always strive for in any position that I've ever had. When I was at the National Business Center where we met, the goal was to create efficiencies in government. The goal was to reduce cycle time in terms of acquisition. The goal was to create better processes in terms of financial management and human resources. The goal was to be a model shared services center for the federal government. And so that was the return on investment.
Yeah. See, again, I'm kind of parched because I know Joe, and I can say that with all honesty and all truthfulness that you not only were investing for the public and the people you served, but I felt like you also invested for those around you. So I guess I saw you as a mentor to many, and it sounds like, again, I don't want to put more words in your mouth. Is also mentoring those around you important? And why is it important? How do you go about mentoring people?
Mentoring is absolutely important. I think that term is probably overused.
Okay.
I think it's a good term. I think people should have mentors. I think people should have sponsors. I think probably a better term is perhaps modeling. You can be a mentor to someone, and you can give them advice, and you can give them counsel, and you can give them suggestions on which way their career should or shouldn't go. I think the best examples that I've had in my career and in my life have been people that I strive to model my behaviors after. I can say that throughout most of my professional career, I've had some pretty fantastic leaders that I could model after, and I could learn some things from. I've also had some bad ones.
Yeah, me too.
And as you know, the reality is you can learn as much from a bad leader as you can from a good leader. And so what I've tried to do is model the good behaviors from the good leaders and not fall in the same traps, if you will, in some of the decision making of some of the bad leaders. But the fact that they, good and bad, modeled certain behaviors, modeled certain attributes, taught me a lot. And it's the difference in my mind between talking the talk and walking the walk. Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of people can talk. Most people can talk. A lot of people talk to talk. But at the end of the day, are they really walking the walk? Because that's what matters, and that's what people see.
So if I could share one really quick story with you, actually. One of my mentees, I'm so proud of her and everything she's accomplished. She told me a story about she, in her organization, she is moving up. And she ran into this lady who very influential. Not many people like her. She can be mean. My mentee, not sure if she likes her. And when she told me the story, I'm like, okay, I'm listening. She said, yeah. So I asked her to be my mentor. Like, yes, thank you. Because it underscored the point, you can learn from anyone.
Absolutely.
Just because you don't like someone doesn't mean they're not good at what they do or bad at what they do, and you can still learn from it.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
That's a great example. And I think the other thing that I would say about that is when you're looking for mentors and you're looking for sponsors and you're looking for people to model a successful career after, they may not always look like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not be the same gender as you.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not be the same race as you.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, that's okay.
Sir.
That's okay.
I really appreciate that you are pushing back on the definition of a mentor, quote unquote. And if I can share something with you. So I was at dinner with some friends this past weekend, and we were talking about how one of the challenges that young people have in their careers, and it may not even be young people, and people in general maybe, is they hear about the importance of having a mentor, and then they get a mentor, they get someone to give them advice, and they believe that they have to follow that advice. So can you tell me about, has there ever been a time when you were given some advice and you were like, yeah, I respect you, but I don't think that's for me? Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely. I think it's a false notion to suggest that anytime anybody gives you any advice, whether it's a mentor or a friend or a coach or even a pastor, I think when people give you information, when they give you guidance, when they give you suggestions, they're doing that, I would say, in good faith, based on how they see the world, based on their view of the world, based on their lens of the world. We all have different lenses. My lens, like your lens, is based on the fact that, where I grew up. The fact that my parents divorced when I was 9 months old. The fact that I spent time in the military. The fact that I've got 6 kids. All those things influence your view of the world.
Yeah.
And so whenever you get advice from someone or suggestions from anyone, if you're the mentee, if you're receiving that guidance and those suggestions, you should be conscious of that. And I think to a certain degree, you have to discount that advice based on that lens.
Yeah.
But I absolutely do not believe that just because a mentor or a sponsor or a person gives you advice that you absolutely have to do it. No, I don't think that at all. Now, I do think it's probably a good idea that when that individual gives you advice, if you don't agree with it, to have a discussion about why that's not appropriate for you at this particular time.
Is that conversation, do you think it's going to be difficult to have that? If you see someone as a mentor, they're probably maybe more senior than you, more experienced. Could you feel awkward, or how would you go about having that conversation?
It's a difficult situation. It's a difficult conversation. I could see where that would be a difficult conversation. But I think it's incumbent upon the mentor and the mentee. If it's an effective mentoring relationship, you establish some ground rules up front. In fact, what I've done lately is have people sign a contract, actually, to some degree. Once we agree on the purpose of the relationship, what the goals are, what we want to accomplish, etc. In fact, in the group that I'm on the board of directors of, which you're familiar of, the African American Federal Executive Association, we have folks sign a contract.
Yeah.
We meet up front and we agree on certain goals. We check in on a monthly basis, and at the end of the 12-month period, we see how things have gone. And in some cases, people do good on the goals they set out to achieve, and in some cases, life gets involved and they don't achieve everything, but that's okay. As long as you have a continuing conversation, as long as you have continuing dialogue on how things are going.
So I'm going to switch gears completely and go to the big word that I tend to hear a lot of negative about, which is political savvy. You have served as one of the top executives within the federal government. And not only have you been top executive in the federal government, but top executive outside the federal government, top executive within the military. What I hear from a lot of government employees who want to progress in their career is that they understand mentally that networking and political savvy is important, but they also feel a tug. They feel that it's slimy. It's manipulating. It's using people. But I think you and I both understand is if you don't have relationships, you don't have these networks, you really can't serve the mission because you need other people to come together to get things done, whether you like them or not. So I guess my question is, how do you go about building these very strategic relationships with people while also not feeling as if you are quote unquote using someone or not being focused on the mission?
It's tough. And I found it to be tougher for some people than others. I think some cultures have more difficulty with being politically savvy than others, but it's a necessary evil. And I think there's a fine line between being politically savvy and understanding the culture of an organization. I think if they aren't brothers or sisters, they're certainly cousins.
Yeah.
Culture and political savvy. And what I mean by that is you have to be politically savvy to succeed in any organization. I don't care if it's the military. I don't care if it's management consulting. I don't care if it's the federal government. I don't care if it's a nonprofit. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to be politically savvy and understand the culture to get things done. And here's what I mean by that. In the federal government, there are certain regulations that people follow. There's standard operating procedures, same thing in the military. In the private sector, nonprofits, there's charters and bylaws, etc. Those are all well and good.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between what is written and how things really work
Yeah.
is where being politically savvy comes in understanding the culture. Because culture is, guess what? That's how things really work.
Yeah.
That's how promotions really happen. That's how awards are really given.
Mm-hmm.
That's how people really move up in the organization. And that's how discipline is administered.
Yeah.
It's all based on the culture more so than what's written down in the HR regulations or in the policy manual.
Yeah.
And so if you don't understand culture, and if you don't understand politically what it means to be politically savvy, then the advice that I would give to anyone is this. Everybody has a boss. If you're a boss, perhaps is not the most ethical person in the world, perhaps not the best leader in the world, perhaps not the best example for you to emulate your behaviors after, that's okay. That's no reason for you to be unethical. There's no reason for you to not be honest. There's no reason for you not to set an example for the people that are under your purview.
Yeah.
Is it easy? Of course not. Not easy at all. But nothing worth having is really easy. Everything worth having is uphill. It's all uphill. So I mean, you have to understand that. But I think the bottom line is, when you get in those type situations, for me, here's the test. Here was my test, because I have had some leaders that weren't as good as other leaders that I've had, and my philosophy was I will do just about anything a boss or supervisor asks me to do, even if I disagree with it. In fact, there were times at the National Business Center where I didn't necessarily agree with, some of the decisions that were made, but I did them anyway, unless they were it was illegal, unethical,
Yeah.
or immoral. And I think if you put that mindset on, okay, I don't think this is the smartest thing we can do, but you're the boss, and you're getting paid to make these decisions, and it's not unethical, it's not immoral, it's not illegal. Okay, we'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll explain it to the folks. I'll own it. We'll run with it.
I appreciate that. There's so many things that can go on about what you just said. But I was just talking to someone the other day about sometimes the leader's job is just to get kicked. I didn't say it like that, but sometimes you just got to take the brunt. And, I think the saying is, when things go right, you give everyone else the credit. When things go wrong, you take the blame. That's what a good leader's supposed to do.
Absolutely, I believe that.
I thank you so much for sharing that. Sorry. So you and I were talking off camera about the power principle and how you've been doing some work with this. Would you mind, one, sharing a little more with me, but then also especially to the people watching today?
Thank you for asking me that question, Alex. I am so excited to share with you briefly here during the course of our conversation, and share with the wider audience really, really soon, more and more of a wider audience, something that I've coined as the power principle. In summary, the power principle is a set of 10 principles that, if you understand them and you leverage them, you can change your life. You can improve your relationships. You can enhance your business. You can enhance your family.
Yeah.
And you can have a brighter future. And what I mean by that is, in the power principle, the hypothesis is this: you have the power. You have the power to change your life in any direction that you want. It's not up to who's ever in the White House. Doesn't matter who your mother or father is. Doesn't matter who your wife or husband is. Doesn't matter if you grew up poor or rich. Doesn't matter if you're black or white. Doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. You have the power.
Yeah.
You have the power to leverage the power of appreciation. You have the power to leverage the power of love. You have the power to leverage the power of fear. All of these, I've just clicked off 3 as examples. You have the power to leverage each one of those to your advantage. And in my talks on the power principle, I give people concrete steps on how they can leverage each one of those in their family and in their businesses and in their life to improve their outcomes. And I'm so excited about it.
So I'm going to have to ask you to dive in a little further. I got to do it. So I have to ask you about the fear, right? Generally speaking, people say fear is bad. I'm never afraid. I don't get scared. I get this done. And so, can you explain to me, like, how can someone leverage fear?
Great question. The best defense against fear is action. The best defense against fear
Yeah.
is action. And I've heard Les Brown say this, and I've heard other speakers say this, that the acronym FEAR can be coined as false evidence appearing real. I've heard some other things. I like false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
That's the one I've heard the most. But I'll give you some examples in my personal life. You know, the example that I like probably the best is David and Goliath. You know, David and his slingshot and Goliath, the big giant. You think David wasn't scared? Of course he was. And how did he overcome that fear? With action.
Yeah.
In my own life, I will tell you, so I'm an AARP, no, you know, surprise to the audience here, but I'm an AARP card carrying member. Have been for the past 13 years.
Yeah.
And about 13 years ago, I had the opportunity to run the Marine Corps Marathon. I'm not a runner. Prior to the Marine Corps Marathon, I think the most I had ever ran probably was a 10K, which is about 6.2 miles, when I was in the military.
Okay.
13 years ago, I'd long been retired. And to make a long story short, I was scared. It's something I always wanted to do. I had a couple of my friends had ran a marathon before. It was on my bucket list, but I really didn't do the proper training and all that kind of stuff. I got a letter in the mail, unsolicited, from the Whitman Walker Clinic, which is an HIV clinic in Washington, D.C. It said, hey, you know, you can run the Marine Corps Marathon and raise money for HIV/AIDS, and you run in a group, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, that's the signal. It's my time.
Yeah.
It's my time to run the marathon. So I got out and I, you know, worked out with a group that ran about the same speed as me. And on that cold day in October, about 13 years ago, I crossed the finish line, 26.2 miles.
Yeah.
But I was scared. And I overcame it with action.
Yeah.
The action was 4 or 5 times a week I would run on my own. And one day a week, on a Sunday, we ran as a group down in Georgetown. Action always overcomes fear.
Yeah.
Absolutely, positively.
I appreciate that. It makes me think of two points on top of that. One is confidence. I've heard, I can't remember where I heard it, but the saying is something like, you should be confident if you've done the work. If you've done the homework, you should be confident. If you haven't done the homework, yeah, you shouldn't be confident. And you did the work. You took action, which allowed you, I assume you felt confident that you were at least going to do it when that day got there. You felt that confidence kind of grew in you.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny you say that, because I think you know this, and I'll share this with the audience, something I'm proud of a lot of stuff, but I'm particularly proud of this. So my oldest daughter, last May, she graduated from a small school you may have heard of in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Harvard.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know, the audience hasn't either. But she graduated from Harvard with a PhD in educational leadership. And at that graduation, we got everybody together, family and friends. We had a little luncheon. And when I got up to speak, I told a story about her. She must have been probably 10, maybe 11 years old. We were stationed at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And of course, she was a basketball player, and I coached her team. And we were out in the playground practicing, and a boy about her same age, one of her classmates, came up and challenged her to a game of one-on-one. And needless to say, she beat him in this game of one-on-one. And she beat him. Have you heard, you know who Oscar Robertson is, right?
Yes.
The Big O, Hall of Famer, Oscar Robertson. I'm messing with you.
Right.
So my daughter, she backed this boy up, just like Oscar Robertson did back in the day. shot a turnaround jump shot
Ooh.
on that swoosh, game over. Now here I am watching my 10-year-old daughter beat this boy. And for me, it was a drop the mic moment. I was so proud of her.
Yeah.
And so you fast forward 20 years later, and she's getting a PhD at Harvard. And so when I got up to speak, I reminisced about that moment 20 years earlier, because what my daughter was really saying then was, you're not the boss of me. You're not better than me. I put in the work.
Yeah.
Game over.
Game over. That's awesome.
So when you put in the work, you do have a certain level of confidence. Absolutely.
Joe, and you also, if you don't mind me sharing one last one, it was just, again, as you were talking, you made me think of just how true that action is. You know, my wife and I bought our first house almost 3 years ago. Up until that moment, I signed those papers. I was shaking, like I was nervous, and it didn't go away until I took action. And as I started thinking back at everything that I was nervous about, when I actually did it, it wasn't as bad, you know. But you gotta do it, because until then, you're gonna have that, like you said. I can't remember the acronym that you said.
False evidence appearing real.
False evidence appearing real. So in your mind, you're thinking you're the worst case scenario when really it's not gonna be that bad. Oh, goodness gracious. I appreciate you sharing this. I really, truly do. So you do, I'm going to wrap up soon, but you do a lot of speaking then. So what do you normally speak on this? Any other topics that you talk about?
Sure. I speak on a variety of topics. The power principle is just one. I also can do mastermind groups with small sessions or larger sessions. Help people and groups communicate better.
Yeah.
I have the ability to do behavioral assessments with small and large groups to help improve their leadership abilities and capabilities. Get 360 feedback from people that they work with, etc.
And so you are a John Maxwell certified speaker teacher coach, speaker teacher trainer.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Very, very proud of that. And in addition to that, my company, we also teach federal employees on a wide variety of financial management topics.
Oh, wow.
To include everything from basic internal controls in the federal government to internal controls over financial reporting, how to conduct a successful audit, how the federal budget process works in terms of budget formulation and budget execution. Wide variety of topics. Anti-Deficiency Act. You name it. A wide range of topics in the financial management portfolio.
So I'm going to ask you. We don't have time for it here, but I am going to ask you if you can maybe share some names of some good books, some good resources that people may want to read, and then I will put it in the description under this video, so anyone can go on and click on it and get those books. I know you got some great books up there you probably want to share.
Well, a couple ones right off the top of my head. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell. Must read. Got to read that. Another one of my favorites, which some of your audience may or may not have heard of, is a book by Og Mandino called The Greatest Salesman in the World. And he has 10 scrolls with 10 lessons on each one of those scrolls that he talks about. Must read. It's a short 110 page book. You can go through it in a couple hours. Must read. Greatest Salesman in the World.
I think the other book you meant to mention was Reaching Senior Leadership.
Absolutely, positively. Forgot about that. I was getting there though. I was getting there.
Okay, gotta plug it. So, Joe, if I can, if I'm gonna wrap up with one last question, and I really love asking this question because I think it says a lot, not only about you, but then also it conveys some really good information for the audience in a fairly short amount of time. What is the best advice that you've received? Who gave it to you? And why would you consider that the best advice you've ever received?
I've received a lot of good advice over the years. Alex, and I don't know if I can narrow it down to one, but I've received so much good advice from so many people, and I've just been so blessed. I can't even imagine. I had so I'm going to give you a couple things real quick. I won't be long. I had a chief master sergeant, which is the highest enlisted grade in the Air Force, about 25 or so years ago. This was at Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico, as well. I was a young captain, and at the time, the Air Force was big on performance feedback. And this chief had just got there, and I was a captain, and I'm feeling myself. And so I called the chief in. I said, Chief, come to my office. I need to give you some feedback. Yeah. Some performance feedback, let you know what my expectations are, because, I'm a baller up here, And so he sits down, and I'm sitting down at my desk. He's sitting there, and I'm giving some feedback. I'm, blah, 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 blah. He didn't say a word. He was just sitting there, just kind of nodding. Okay. Then he went back to his office. Came back about a half hour later. He said, Captain, you got a minute? Sure, Chief, come on in. So he sat down. He said, now, Captain, now I want to give you some feedback. What? He says, you're in charge of this office. You're a captain. I'm a chief. I expect you to lead by example. I expect you to emulate service before self, excellence in all we do, and integrity. See, I don't expect you to ask me to do anything that you wouldn't do. I expect you to respect my opinion, leverage my years of experience. Went on down the line. I'm like, well, that's one of the best pieces of advice I could have got from anybody. Because what he was telling me is, yeah, you got the captain bars. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you know everything. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't respect my position as the chief and leverage what I have to bring to the fight. And after that eye-opening experience, I learned from it. Yeah. And now you got to remember too, this chief was much older than me, much wiser than me, way more experienced than me. I would be foolish for me not to leverage that experience, and I did. I learned from that. Another time, I had a retired chief tell me that, he said, Captain, right is right, no matter how many people are against it. And wrong is wrong, no matter how many people are for it. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Great advice. And I'll close with this. The last thing I want to say is, I heard this at a conference some time ago. And it's about the power of vision. It has to do with the power of vision. And I talk about the power of vision in the power principle. And it goes something like this. The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision. You know who said that? Helen Keller said that. And so when it comes to leadership, when it comes to life, you better have a vision. You better have a vision, because people will be attracted to a leader with a vision, and they will follow a leader with a vision if they believe in that leader. You've heard the saying, if there's no vision, the people perish. And so my advice is, make sure you have a vision. Sir. Because if you don't, any road to get you to where you're going.
Joe, this has been fantastic, amazing. I greatly appreciate it. I know everyone here appreciates everything you've shared. I do have to say, please, if you did appreciate or found this video to be helpful, please click the like button, subscribe, and hit that notification button if you haven't done it already. We want to share this message with as many people as possible. Again, we do this because we can help, and we want to help as many people as possible. Joe, again, thank you so much. I am going to ask you to provide some final words, but I do want to thank you really quickly. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
So in closing, I'd just like to say this, and I'll keep it short and sweet. Whether you're a young person starting your first job in the federal government, or whether you're a GS-12 in the federal government or GS-15 in the federal government at a senior level, or even a member of the senior executive service. My advice to you is very simple. Have a conscience. Follow your conscience. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world today, a lot of stuff going on here in our country, and a lot of things going on around the world that are troubling to a lot of folks, myself included. And at the end of the day, make sure that you can look yourself in the mirror with a straight face and be able to answer 3 questions honestly, and be able to look at your significant other and your parents and your children. And these 3 questions are always the 3 questions anytime there's any controversy or anytime there's anything significant going on. What did you know? When did you know it? And what did you do about it? If you can answer those 3 questions with a straight face and face your children and your spouse or significant other and your parents, then you're certainly on the right road. Thank you.